Hello everyone, welcome to the Comic Review. My name is Eric. Today we're going to go into a little bit of conspiracy theory territory here with today's episode of the review. Basically, I have been taking a look at what's going on DC Universe-wise with stories like Superman Reborn and the aftermath issues to that, Rebirth itself, the entirety of that whole storyline, the recently finished Button storyline that went on in Batman and the Flash, and got to thinking about a couple things in the larger DC Universe, and basically, I came up with a little weird conspiracy theory kind of thing. So I just wanted to share with you guys. I really want just like feedback from the world at large. Any articles that I've been looking at and other comic reviewing videos from other YouTubers I've seen really hasn't touched on this. So basically, this is just me trying to figure out if I'm crazy or not at this point. So put on your tinfoil hat, look around for some black helicopters, because today we are going into theory mode. That's right, today's comic review is basically going to be more of theory crafting, I guess, looking at the larger DC universe, what's going on right now, and trying to unlock one certain aspect of the DC universe as it exists right now. Just so you know, at the beginning of this video, I'm going to say it right now, probably say it a couple times during the video, but definitively right now, we are going to be doing spoilers for DC Rebirth as a whole, mainly including the Superman Reborn storyline and the aftermath issues in Action Comics for that. We're also going to be dealing with stuff that's going on in Flash and Batman, specifically the Button storyline. And there's going to be some other things that we're going to be looking at from even before Rebirth in this theory today. So just want to put that all out there right now so that way you guys are totally knowing what we're going to be talking about today. So as we all know from goings on in the DC Universe, different theories from the Rebirth special itself, as well as blatant showings in the recent Button Part 4 issue in Flash, that we know that Dr. Manhattan either changed or is responsible for, or in some way has to do with missing years taken from the DC Universe, as told to us from Wally West in the DC Rebirth #1 special. But basically what I want to kind of talk about today is, what if it wasn't just missing years and missing time that was changed in the DC Universe? And I've also gotten to think about, where is the DC Universe actually taking place right now? The easy answer that we're always been told is that the DC Universe takes place on New Earth. It's not, any kind of multiple Earths from the different timelines. We are definitively on New Earth, the Earth that was created at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths back in 1986. But I'm starting to actually wonder, based on different things going on, if we are actually still on New Earth at this point. I'm wondering, my theory basically is wrapping around, did Dr. Manhattan not only change time, but was there something else going on, either from Manhattan or something else, as to basically changing the DC Universe as a whole? And this really got me thinking from people on message boards once the Superman Reborn storyline ended and we had the New World two-parter in Action Comics that came out after that. There are two major things from that storyline that people immediately point out. Is that, one, Clark Kent Superman, what I'm now calling the Reborn Superman, or the Rebirth Superman, since he is now a combination of the New 52 and post-crisis Superman, which we'll get to that in a minute, that he is missing time still from his adventures. He is still missing memories. He's not 100% sure that he's even remembering things. He thinks he's missing things, missing information. One of the major things that people point out that could be a missing aspect that Clark is forgetting is Connor Kent, the Superboy that came out of Reign of the Supermen. When Superman died in the 90s, there was the whole Death of Superman, Funeral for a Friend, and then we finally got into Reign of the Supermen, which was in the 4 main Superman books at the time. We had stories about John Henry Irons, Steel. We had the Eradicator running around as Superman. We had Hank Henshaw running around as Superman. But we also had a Superboy running around who was, we find out later, was a clone of Superman, and also had some DNA of Lex Luthor in there. That version of Superboy has not been seen at all since Flashpoint storyline and going into the New 52. He was replaced by another version of Superboy, which I kind of don't want to get into right now about that whole backstory. But that whole aspect of what he's missing, people pointing that out, that maybe what he's missing is Superboy. And then the other thing that people were complaining about, upset about, was the Kents. Jonathan and Martha Kent in the rewritten I'm not going to say definitive origin of Superman because he is still missing time. Kind of hoping that once we've gotten all this figured out, that they actually come out with another Man of Steel or Birthright kind of story for a miniseries for Superman, so we can actually see his definitive history once it's all put back together. But the other thing that people point out and complain about was the fact that Jonathan and Martha Kent were still dead. Now, when Grant Morrison wrote Action Comics at the beginning of the New 52, he established that the Kents were dead. They were not alive during the New 52 or during Clark's time in Metropolis. They died sometime around Clark's graduation prom time, which, when we read through the Superman Reborn aftermath, we find out that the Kents were still dead and they died on the night of his prom. And a lot of people were upset about that, and these are all people who grew up reading Superman in the late 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, because the Kents were always there. And I'm sitting there literally at my nephew's birthday party, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, we're going through this whole legacy thing, and keeping the Kents dead technically is kind of going with the legacy still, because the Golden Age and into the Silver Age, the Kents were always dead. They died after Clark graduated from high school or sometime around there. So the Kents being in Superman's life was not a thing. The Kents being in Superboy's life was a thing. In the DC Comics portraying young Clark Kent operating as Superboy in Smallville, the Kents were there for general guidance and whatnot, basically serving the same role that they served in the Superman books after Man of Steel in 1986. One of the things missing from Clark's history of all this is also the fact that, was he Superboy at that time? We do have, as seen in Batman, we do have Saturn Girl running around as Legion of Superheroes. She's in Arkham Asylum right now, but we still don't have a definitive as to whether or not Clark hung out with the Legion when they were when he was a kid, whether or not he was operating Superboy. So there's actually 2 to 3 aspects of Superboy that we don't have so far in Rebirth. That is, Clark Kent being Superboy as a kid and hanging out with the Legion of Superheroes. We don't have Connor Kent, the clone from Reign of the Superman, and we don't have Con-El, the Superboy from the New 52 era. So there's 3 Superboys we're missing in that, but still going back to the Kents for a second. I got sidetracked on that. Going back to the Kents for a second, everybody was still harping on the fact that the Kents are dead still, but again, going to the legacy of the Kents, of the storylines, it makes sense if they're trying to bring in, depending on what aspects of post-crisis timeline or pre-crisis timeline they're grabbing from. And then I got to think about the pre-crisis aspect of that, and then going to look at the next part of my theory here of the Button, specifically part 2 of the Button. Batman and Flash use the cosmic treadmill that is in the Watchtower, for some reason, the JLA Watchtower, to trace the signal of the Button, where they get thrown through time. And during this whole aspect, we see images of the League and the Justice League operating at different points. We see the formation of the Justice League and how that happened differently than on the New 52 Earth. We also see a scene in there from Identity Crisis, and we see a scene in there from Crisis on Infinite Earths. Batman wonders if these are all images from a different timeline. Barry kind of confirms, or basically realizes or theorizes or whatever, that these are all part of the missing years, or the altered history of the DC Universe. But the images themselves are very interesting because they're all pre-crisis images. The main image of them as the Justice League is obviously from their first appearances in the 50s and 60s. The image of Barry dying in front of Batman was during Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is technically pre-crisis or during crisis. Even the image of Batman talking to the Justice League and getting mind-whammied by Zatanna is technically pre-crisis because it's Barry Allen there, and not Wally West as the Flash, and not Kyle Rayner as the Flash, or as a Green Lantern. It's Hal and Barry. So all these images are pre-crisis images that we're seeing. Then we fast forward to part 4 of the Button. Like I said, if you haven't read the Button, there's many reviews online. I may actually end up doing one here soon. There's many reviews online of the Button if you want to catch up on that complete storyline. Apologize for spoilers. In part 4 of the Button, the cosmic treadmill is breaking apart. Batman and Flash are getting ready to be whisked away into the Speed Force, and the voice is calling out to Barry from the Speed Force and says, say my name, say Jay, essentially. And Barry says the name, and Jay Garrick, the original Earth 2 Flash, comes through, saves them, brings them out of the Batcave, but Barry's not the lightning rod that Jay needs to be pulled into the Earth and gets sucked back in the Speed Force or something by Dr. Manhattan. He's just not here anymore. Batman is theorizing whether or not Jay came from an alternate timeline like his father, the Flashpoint Batman, came over. And I have to wonder about that because it's obviously the Earth 2 version or the original version of Jay Garrick. It's not the one from Earth 2, the current, or not even current. It's not the one from the Earth 2 Society book that we've had throughout the New 52. This is pre-New 52, pre-Flashpoint Jay Garrick. And the line about the alternate timeline makes me wonder, is this a Jay Garrick from post-Crisis that was living on New Earth, essentially, and was a mentor figure? Or is this, based on all the other information we've seen, the Jay Garrick from Earth 2? Which brings me then to the third aspect of my theory and my, going in order here, is we actually would need for this third part, not even to look at anything with Rebirth, but to go back to 2 years ago to Convergence. If anybody has not read Convergence, watching this video, Convergence was a miniseries that took place over 2 months. It was a weekly series that was commemorating essentially the 30th anniversary of Crisis on Infinite Earths, where it being brought all these cities, Brainiac style, to this planet for giggles, I guess, I don't know, but he brought them all from a point before these universes were destroyed. It's from all the different aspects of the multiverse. There's post-Crisis, pre-Crisis. Every aspect of these characters, these histories, some city was brought in, and accompanying these books, or these the main miniseries, was monthly series during April and May, looking at small little aspects of those cities. 1 week all the books were post-Crisis, 1 week they were all pre-Crisis, 1 week they were all Golden Age and other stuff. So it was all these different things. This is actually where we get the post-Crisis Superman entering into the New 52 world, is actually from this, and this is the part of the whole theory that makes me wonder why people aren't looking back at Convergence for some answers as to Rebirth. They were all looking at just Rebirth material and a little bit of Superman stuff from the Death of Superman, the Final Days of Superman arc that happened right before Rebirth, where the New 52 Superman died. But no one is going back far enough to Convergence for any answers. At the end of issue 8, or during issue 8, Telos is about to send all the Earths back to the original point of origins. He's about to send Barry Allen, the pre-Crisis Barry Allen, back to die during the Crisis, and send Supergirl back to die during the Crisis. But he can't do anything, essentially. He's having issues with doing these things because there's something about the collapse of the multiverse that's preventing him from sending all the Bottle Cities back. We then get Superman, post-Crisis Superman, Lois Lane and their new baby Jonathan, as well as Parallax from just before 0 Hour, or sometime around 0 Hour, must have been before 0 Hour. They offer to go back and prevent the collapse of the multiverse. The interesting about this to me is that the next place we see Lois Clark, I think we see Parallax and Green Lantern during the Renegade arc, but the next time that in the timeline that we actually see post-Crisis Superman, post-Crisis Lois Lane and their baby is at the beginning of the New 52, as far as the first appearance of Darkseid and the Justice League getting together, and Superman deciding that he wasn't going to interfere and makes the decision to basically work in secret. We don't really ever see, except for a small, like, 2-panel spread in that first issue of that book, we don't actually ever see what happened during the multiverse collapse. We kind of get an indication that Superman and Supergirl and Parallax and everything fight against the Anti-Monitor, but we never actually see anything else that happens. Even in Convergence number 8, we see them go through and they get sent back in time, and they're like, we will try to do whatever we can to stop the collapse, and then you just get a text box that says, and they did. That's it. We don't see anything, and I know a lot of people were upset about that at that time, that we don't get to see what happened there. But now I'm wondering if DC is going to be saving that for something happening with all this Watchmen stuff. Now, the multiverse was saved. The multiverse did not collapse in Crisis on Infinite Earths, so that whole aspect was undone, essentially. Meaning that at no point did Earth 1 collapse. At no point did Earth 2 collapse. Earth 5, Earth X, and was it Earth S? Those Earths did not collapse upon themselves into forming one Earth. Now, you could say with this whole theory, well, but all the reign of the Supermen still happened, everything like that. You could almost argue that, with the exception of team-ups with the Justice League, that everything that happened in the DC universe post-Crisis could have happened to the pre-Crisis version had it continued. With a little conjiggering here and there to fix little plot points and stuff like that. But again, looking at what we have in Rebirth right now, we have basically everyone from the original Earth 1, with a few exceptions like Johnny Thunder and Ted Kord, because he would be from the Charlton Earth, and some little aspects like that. The new 52 Rebirth world is primarily filled with Earth 1 characters. Even the Jay Garrick that we see, we're not even sure whether or not he's from the post-Crisis timeline, whether or not he's from reconfigured Earth 2, and it makes me wonder, is this Earth 1? If the multiverse never collapsed in Convergence, did we have a surviving Earth 1? And then I have to wonder, even with Flashpoint, is the Barry Allen that went back in time to save his mother and do all that stuff, is that the post-Crisis Barry Allen that came back to life during the original Flash Rebirth story? Or is that a not random, but is that an Earth 1 version of Barry that went back and do that? And then when he came back, was that Dr. Manhattan's time to be like, okay, now we're going to reconfigure and steal time and everything from this Earth and from this universe and make his master plan go into action, stealing the years from the DC universe, from the Earth 1 universe, blocking somehow Earth 2 from the Earth 1 characters, blocking Wally West and the Speed Force, blocking Jay Garrick and the Speed Force, making Johnny Thunder think that he somehow trapped the JSA somewhere, Saturn Girl now being stranded on Earth, what I'm now going to call Earth 1, and not being able to communicate with Legion. So basically that is my theory. That basically all the evidence we have and everything we've seen, all the images we have, characters that are operating, with a few exceptions, I understand, but that because of the Convergence, we now have an uncollapsed multiverse, and that Dr. Manhattan has been altering things in the multiverse the entire time, not just on Earth, but also possibly locking away passage to all the other Earths, locking away those characters, putting some of those characters on New Earth or Earth 1, depending on if you believe the theory or not. What implications, knowing what Earth everything is on, is kind of unknown at this point, but it could be DC's way of with the legacy, fully restoring what had come before by fully giving us a proper Earth 1, fully giving us a proper Earth 2 with the original World War II characters, getting people back to where they were before the Crisis. I mean, like I said, we already had a uncollapsed multiverse. We have Earth 1 characters primarily dominating what's called New Earth. So this could prove that Dr. Manhattan's evil plot, or whatever it is, has far more reaching applications, and in order to with the Doomsday Clock storyline coming on, maybe that's what Mr. Oz needed to do to protect Superman, was split him up into his old versions and recreate old versions, basically splitting up the energy and creating things based on previous versions of the multiverse of Superman in there. Who knows? This is basically, again, this is all rambling theory. I know there's some holes in there. I would like to know what you guys think. If you were able to follow me during that entire speech, let me know what you guys think. Do you believe that the DC Universe, as it currently is a reconfigured Earth 1 that we are slowly rebuilding into its formerness, throwing aspects or adding aspects from the post-Crisis world into the Earth 1 history? Or do you still believe that everything is still on New Earth? There is no Earth 2 other than the Earth 2 Society book that I believe recently ended, and that all the World War II characters are still just the original characters from the Golden Age. Because again, remember, they took 10 years away, but we don't know where those 10 years are, and I doubt all 10 of those years are World War II years. just to me wouldn't make any sense. So that's basically the theory here. You can take off your tinfoil hat now at this point, and like I said, let me know in the comments what you think about this theory. Am I a complete crackpot? Could you not understand what I was doing because I was rambling too much? And what do you believe? What are your theories about what's going on with Dr. Manhattan and what's going on with the DC Universe as a whole? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of the Comic Review. We do videos randomly here at this point, so go ahead and if you enjoyed the video, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, click that bell so that way next random time I decide to do a video, you will know exactly when that is. So I will see you guys all in the next review. Later.